Most of us know what we believe. The harder part is actually living like it. I'm Tim Dickert, and welcome to Say So, where we actually work things out together through faith, real conversation, and the kind of growth that actually sticks. Let's go. Welcome back to the next podcast for Say So. I am really glad you're here, and I'm glad you're joining with us today. I have something that incredibly set a fire in my heart. I know that's not easy to do because it just seems like it happens once a week. But I heard it. I looked over at my pastor. We both looked at each other and we knew how much it was hitting our hearts once we heard it. And it's been I'm on the third or fourth day since I've heard it. And I'm sharing it with each person that I come in contact with on each day. So I shared it with a room of people that I work with, friends already, and I'm writing a blog on it. Now, of course, we're doing a podcast of Say So on it, and it really excites me. So we're here today, and I'm sharing it with you. And I know it will bless you, it will challenge you, and we're going to jump right into it. I'm calling it Don't Demote God in the Dark. So on the National Day of Prayer, which was Thursday, our church had a table at the National Day of Prayer at the Mount Carmel Baptist Church on the east side of Gainesville. Wonderful gathering. It was a terrific day. Lots of people there. We had elected officials from the county, from the city, and just a lot in attendance. And we were having a great time. Preacher was giving some great word, and he was working through his passage, and we got to the familiar passage of the storm on the Sea of Galilee. Yeah, I believe it's Mark chapter 4. Most, if not all of us, have heard it. Jesus went to sleep in the back of the boat. The storm comes up. The disciples panic. He wakes up. He tells the wind to knock it off, and everything goes still. And then the preacher started making some incredible points that I've never seen or even thought about. Never have. And of course, what I've said earlier is I haven't been able to shake it since that point. And I know it's going to just excite me to keep sharing it with people because it resonated with me. It exposed things that I've done in the past. And I know it's going to challenge others. So the preacher said, when the disciples woke Jesus up, they didn't call him Lord. They called him teacher. And he asked the question, the preacher did. Why is it that when we go through a storm, we demote God? I want you to think about that. Think about that. Why is it that when we go through a storm, we demote God? That's what I want to dig in today because I think that's a question that hits closer than most of us ever want to admit. Because I know I have. So let me set the scene for you. It's evening. Jesus has just spent the entire day teaching by the water, parables, the crowds, the whole thing. He's telling the disciples, let's cross over to the other side. They get in the boat, and pretty quickly, Jesus is in the stern, in the back of the boat, grabs a cushion as a pillow, and goes to sleep. So the book of Mark tells us a massive windstorm came up. The Greek word that he uses is interesting. It's a Lailap's. Not even going to pronounce it. And that's not like a small light rain. It's a squall. It's a violent, sudden squall, the kind that comes up out of nowhere on the Sea of Galilee. The waves are breaking into the boat. The boat is starting to get full with water. And experienced fishermen, by the way, that are on the boat, as they know what a bad storm would look like. And fear has gripped them and they are scared. So they go back to the rear of the boat, shake Jesus awake, and here is what they say. And I want you to hear the actual words. Teacher, don't you care that we're drowning? Mm, teacher. That's the word. In the Greek word, it's mm, Didaskalos. The same word you would use for a typical rabbi, uh, respected instructor, like a man that would just have valuable things to say. A human title for a human being. Now, these same men had watched Jesus heal people that nobody thought could be healed. They had seen him cast out demons. They had heard him teach and watched crowds go silent because nobody had ever spoken with that type of authority. They knew something was certainly different about Jesus. But when the storm hit, all of that went somewhere. And what came out of its place was the simple word of teacher. The storm didn't change who Jesus was, but it completely changed how they saw him. And listen, that's us. That's all of us. So, interesting thing about storms is it will reveal our theology. Here's what I want you to understand about this moment. So the disciples didn't decide to reduce Jesus. They didn't sit down and think, "Hey guys, we need to reconsider our Christology right now. We're going through a storm, and we just need to review this." No, it happened automatically, very instinctively. The pressure of a storm surfaced what was already underneath their faith. And that's what storms do. They don't create your theology, they just reveal it. I'll say that again. Storms don't create your theology, they reveal it. When things are going fine, it's so easy to say all the right things about who God is. We use the right words, we sing the right songs, we check all the right boxes, we say all the right things of hallelujah, thank you, Lord. But the storm that we're going through, it's always like X-ray. It shows what you actually are holding, what's actually holding the structure together. And sometimes what you find is that the foundation isn't as solid as you thought. So the disciples had information about Jesus. They didn't yet have trust in him. And there's a canyon between those things. Information about Jesus and then the trust in him. See, you can know all the facts about God and still call him teacher when your boat fills up. You can know all the vocabulary and still lead an accusation instead of faith. That's not cynicism. That's just honesty. So, another thing that we should look at is the accusation that came with God's demotion. I don't want to skip past that second half of what they said because it's not just the title that stung. That phrase, teacher, don't you care that we're drowning? They didn't just reduce Jesus's title, they even questioned his character. Because in that same sentence, that double wound of a faith crisis, we don't just doubt God's power, we start doubting his very character, his heart. We go from Lord to teacher to do you even care about what's happening and what I'm going through right now? Man, it hurts to say those words. And we do it faster than we would like to admit. I've been there. I've done the same thing. And I think that's why it reveals me so much and it hits my heart because I don't want this to happen ever again. Not in my heart. Some people are out there and they probably can feel the past of a possible job falling apart or a relationship falling into. A diagnosis comes back. And somewhere in the middle of all that, you stop praying and you start accusing. Not always out loud, but somewhere inside your chest, that slow drift from trust to grievance. What I want you to know is that this is that moment. This is the exact moment where faith is forged, not when everything is still and not in the calm, but in this. See, he shows up before your theology catches up. Here's what gets me about the story. Jesus calms the storms first, before he even addresses their faith, before he corrects the title, before any of it. He doesn't say, hey, guys, you call me by the wrong name. You need to call me by the right name, and then I'm going to help you. He doesn't make them demonstrate a correct theology before he acts. He gets up, he speaks to the storm like he owns it, because he does. And then after the sea is calm, he turns to them and says, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? He waits until after to ask the question. And that's not accident. That's grace operating in the sequence. First, the demonstration, then the invitation to grow. Oh, I love that. First, the demonstration, and then the invitation to grow. I think it's super important for you to hear if you're in a storm right now. Your reduced view of God doesn't reduce his willingness to show up to help you. He's not waiting for you to get your theology perfect before he moves in your situation. He meets you always where you're at. He always has. But he also doesn't leave you there. He still asks the question. He still wants you to grow into someone who reaches for Lord instead of teacher when the water starts coming in. Here's what I want to leave you with today. When the storm hits, And it's going to hit. Pay attention to that title that comes out of you, because that title is going to tell you something true about where your faith actually is living right now. If you reach for teacher, that's not a reason to be ashamed. It's a reason to do the work. You'll have to rebuild the foundation. You'll have to spend time in the Word, not to get information, but to build trust. That's a different reading posture, and it produces a different result. If you're in the middle of a storm right now, and if you're reaching for teacher, if you've been questioning whether he even cares, I want to say this to you directly right now. He calmed the sea for the men who questioned his character. He moved before their faith was where it needed to be. He showed up in the middle of their reduced view of him, and he demonstrated exactly who he was. He is the Christ. He is the Son of the living God. He is Jesus, and he's going to do the same for you. But don't let that storm have the last word on his title. Don't let the dark shrink your view of who he is. The waves in that storm, and the waves that want to rattle your life, the waves that are out there that want to toss you to and fro, they don't get a vote on that, and you don't let them. Psalms 107, you know how it goes. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. And you say so. Even when you can't feel it, even when the water is coming in, say what is true about who he is, and not just what the storm is telling you. And that's the practice, that's the work, and that's how the title will stay Lord. I'm glad you're here today. I'm glad you're joining with us. I am super glad for this message, and I know it's going to bless others. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Say So.